Welcome to the Nordic Model Now podcast, where we provide critical narratives on the global sex trade and give a voice to its survivors. In this, our first episode, we speak to Anna, who as a teenager was groomed into prostitution in the late 80s and continued in that life for 11 years on the streets of Leeds in the north of England. Her story shows the insidious nature of the grooming process and details the increasing use of violence and coercive control by her pimp, who was also her partner and the father to her 3 children. Anna speaks about the punters who paid for sex, the other women she was prostituted with, the connections with the local lap dancing club, and the long-term effects the life has had on herself and her children. Her story is harrowing and contains descriptions of violence and abuse that some listeners may find disturbing. Discretion is advised.
I was born in Cyprus because my dad was a member of the RAF and my mum. So I lived in Cyprus till I was 4 and then spent sort of like the first 12 years of my life travelling to various RAF camps every sort of like 3 years. So having to learn to make new friends and adapt to new areas, which I think is very important in where I can adapt now. You know, it's like never got too comfortable anywhere, but was used to the sense of belonging that you get like on a military base. So we stayed in the RAF till I was 16, and then we went into Civvy Street, and that's when things just kind of turned. I think
When you were 16?
Yeah.
And where's Civvy Street?
We call it Civvy Street. That's where civilians are. So when you've been in the RAF and then you leave the RAF, they say, oh, you're going into Civvy Street.
Right.
So it's like coming into civilian life, because on an RAF base, everything's very protected. There's a certain way of living. The discipline's very high. You've got to sort of like do right, because if you don't do right, it affects your parents and then you get in double trouble. You know, it's kind of... So I remembered, like, when I first came to Leeds, I came with the intentions of doing contemporary dancing. So I got this nice little grant, and it was great because you can do your dancing, get your big amount of money. And I went to Chapeltown in Leeds. And back in sort of like it would have been 89 then, there was a lot of sound systems. Everybody was very relaxed. We'd all sit in the park, chill. And I just found that the same sense of belonging that I had on the RAF base that you found within this community. Didn't realise that a lot of the closeness within that community was brought together through poverty and a common cause. So again, that's what it was. In the RAF, you've all got a common cause. In an area like Chapeltown, not just Chapeltown, there's areas all over London, for example, like Brixton, you have a common cause. You know, everybody's struggling, you're fighting the same struggle, so there's an understanding. Yeah. So I found Chapeltown quite exciting, and being sort of like 18, size 8 waist, 44 double D chest, long blonde hair, it was like new meat. That's almost what it was like. So I got quite a lot of attention, which I think at that point in life I kind of needed, because it was not just the attention, it was a sense of like reassurance, you know, acceptance. So I started off going from like one house to another, a bit like you were saying yourself, you know, like going from one place to another without having a definite place to live. And I suppose that made me look vulnerable. So as soon as you're in an area like that where things are going on, a new girl coming from out of town, they used to always call us out of towners, out of towner, you kind of find yourself sucked into the wrong sort of circle. It's quite funny how I met the guy that put me on the street, because we were in a park at one of the sound systems, and this girl said to me, oh, that lad over there likes you, and I'm just kind of looking thinking, you know, like I really thought he was not too good looking. And then we went to Blues later on that night, like a blues club where everything was really cool, and he came back in and he was smiling, and I found myself like instantly attracted to this, because it was like, oh, you didn't want to talk to me earlier on. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't see you smile. So we sort of like talked from maybe midnight until about 8 in the morning when the Blues closed, and from that day onwards we never spent a day apart. It was a real strange situation. I went to go and stay with him, he was staying with his friend, and he got me into his social circle, which was, I didn't even know what the social circle was, we'd be hanging around in pubs locally, and there was a lot of girls and their boyfriends, and then they all seemed really loved up, you know, like good relationships. And then the girls used to disappear at about 6:30 at night, and I was the only girl sat around with all the lads, which made me feel a bit sort of like awkward. But I didn't ask questions. I was naive. I didn't know. I didn't figure out what was happening, where they were going. They would come back maybe at 2, 3 in the morning, by which time we'd be in the blues, and I'd see them all giving their partners money. And there was one girl that kept giving money to the lad that I'd got with, and I just asked him one day, like, why is she giving you money? So he sort of explained to me, oh, you know, they go out and work, they work locally. And I'm like, work? What do they do? And he was just like, oh, you know, they work the streets. So I didn't really give it much thought. I just thought, oh, I feel sorry for him, at least I don't have to do that, you know, to keep my boyfriend. But it came to a point where when the girls went off to work and you were the only one there, they made you feel awkward for being there. So that kind of pushed me to want to be involved in what the girls were. But it was very difficult as well, because I was a threat to some of them girls, because they're going out all night to work and I'm sat in the place where all their chaps are. So they were a bit kind of funny with me. But one girl, she took me under her wing at the request of my boyfriend. And
how old is he?
He's only 2 years old. No, he's 3 years older than me, so he would have been 21.
Okay.
You see, a lot of people, it's jumping forward a bit now, because now I'm older and I look at it, I don't really blame him exactly for the choices that I say we made, because he's just a product of his environment. And Chapeltown's been known for prostitution for so many years, from right back Jack the Ripper kind of days. It was rife. And it seemed very much a trend. Like this day and age, it's spice or it's knife crime. Back then, it was not the fashion, because the fashion is that it was accepted. You know,
right.
It was an acceptable way of life. So, because a lot of people say to me, oh, you know, aren't you mad with him? And I say, I'm mad at some of the things that he did during the time that we were together. But you can't blame somebody directly for pimping when they grow up going to nursery, walking past girls that are on the street. If it becomes their norm, then they're going to think that that's normal.
Yeah.
So this one girl, she said, oh, you know, Anna, if you want to come with us, I'll help you. And I thought, I don't even know how to do makeup. I've never been a makeup-y kind of person. I haven't got the clothes, don't know how to do the makeup. She's like, oh, don't worry, you know, I'll help you out. So I remember taking me from the pub. I felt so good, you know, going with everybody else, you know, part of the crew. And we were drinking and we were getting ready, and they were all like putting me in these different clothes. And then I remember the very first punter that I ever did, he pulled up and I was really, really scared. I just thought, I don't even know what to do. But when I got to the car and spoke to him, he was more nervous than me. So it kind of gave me, I felt like I was in control. So I got in the car, you know, I'd been told what you had to say and what you had to get. And I found that it wasn't easy to like have sex with a punter, but once I'd had sex with that first punter and realised that I'm still here, there was no danger, there was no harm, I was able to not really think about anything, and I've got money in my hand. Because before that, when you're young and you can't really get any kind of benefit help or whatever, and I'd spent my grant enjoying the summer in Leeds, it was a case of having like £25 in my hand from having £25 that I might have had to last me all week. Was just like, wow. It was almost like a power thing.
Yeah.
And then I think I did 2 more punters that night, and then we met a guy who, he was a co-producer for Dallas. Do you remember Dallas, the old programme?
Yeah.
Well, he used to write, he was a script writer, and somebody had dared him to come to the UK or challenged him to come to the UK and spend, I think, £150,000 in 2 days. So he came over and he was insane.
What?
You know, he was just like, when he pulled up and said, oh, you know, I want 2 girls to go to the hotel, the girl I was working with wasn't there, so I was too scared to go to the hotel. But then as he turned round in his taxi, she came. So we went to the hotel, and this man was very heavily into coke. He would go in the shop and buy tinfoil off the lady in the shop and give her a £50 note and tell her, like, keep the change. And he just wanted us to accompany him back to the hotel. And he was throwing like thousands at us. It was like, we ended up spending about 8 or 9 hours with him, but he wouldn't let us go as well. He was kind of, he he had us in a position where he was withholding some of our stuff because he didn't want us to leave him, or he didn't. I think he was a bit frightened that maybe we would have like robbed his money or something. So by the time we finished with him, I think I had about £3,500 in my pocket. So that's my first night working. So obviously you're on this kind of high, like, wow, I felt in control, I felt rich. I was getting a lot of praise from the other guys, and they were sort of, oh, well, you look what Anna's made and blah, blah, blah. So I felt, I felt on top of the world in some ways.
Yeah.
Completely in denial of what was going on or what we had to do or witness for that money. So I think basically that's how it more or less started off. I'm not going to say I was beaten up and pimped and forced into it, but it was very clever grooming. It was put you in the right social circle and make it become like a natural progression. So then I felt like I was making my own choices, so then I couldn't be angry at anybody, which a lot of grooming is done that way. It's not a case of I'm going to beat you up and you are going to go out there and do something, because it doesn't work like that. But you make a girl feel loved, you put her in a circle of friends, and then you just naturally follow that kind of circle.
Yeah.
So that's where I came from, and that's how it sort of like ended up going the way it did.
Wow. And how long did you end up?
Altogether about 11 years, during which time I had 3 kids. Looking back now, that was the hardest thing of it, because although I've had kids, I didn't plan any of my kids. It wasn't, oh, I'm gonna have 3 children to this guy or anything like that. It was, oh gosh, I'm pregnant. In fact,
from the guy that you met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But saying that, when we used to sit in the pub, I had a feeling I was pregnant, like very early on with him. And then when it was confirmed that I was pregnant, it made it even easier to enter into that, because then you start thinking, oh my gosh, where am I going to get the things I need for a baby? It's all like you start to kind of panic.
Yeah.
So, but the worst thing about that is working through the pregnancies. I didn't take any care of myself. I was literally working at this stage probably from midday till about 4 o'clock, and then I'd go and have something to eat, and then we would go to Bradford, Lum Lane, from sort of like 10 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning. So
you travel from Leeds to Bradford.
Yeah.
For the night shift?
Yeah, there'd be one of the guys a couple of guys would take you over. We'd have to pay them petrol. Despite the fact that they're your partner, you'd have to pay them petrol, and they'd get money out of you anyway. They kind of could.
Yeah.
I didn't have many bad experiences on the street. Most of the bad experience would come from having the kids, because I worked right up until 2 weeks before I was due with my eldest, and then I went to my mum's to have her, because I'd never had a baby before, and you want your mum.
How old were you at that point?
I was nearly 20 at that point, and then I went to my mum's, I had my daughter, and then came back to Leeds. We'd had this new flat, and I'd got everything in it, I thought, oh, maybe when I come back I'm just going to focus on being a mum. I'm going to tell him I don't want to do it anymore. We're going to live this kind of life. And I came back I had to come back because I had a court date, because you get arrested a lot and get fined, or you get charged and you have to go to court. So I came back from a court case, and I remember being sat in the court, and this girl said to me, oh, Anna, thanks for letting me stay at your flat while you was away. And I'm like, what do you mean stay at your flat? Now this girl was the ex to my partner. She was the one that I very first saw giving him money. So it turned out that the whole time I was away, he had her working. He was taking her to replace me while I wasn't here. And I remember her saying to me, oh, the only problem is you didn't have no towels, so I had to use your dressing gowns to get dry. And I'm like, so wait a minute, I've got this brand new flat set up, I've got my baby's cot, the bed's in the room, you were in there sleeping with my partner, you were using my dressing gown to dry yourself, because I got his and hers, matching dressing gowns. And from there, everything just went downhill. It was a case of, I felt very deceived, very cheated. I didn't want to do anything for him. I didn't want to be around all that. Yeah. And I would say now, had a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to clean the flat, I didn't want to touch it, I didn't want to sleep in the bed. I felt very violated. And this flat got really, really bad. I wasn't throwing rubbish out. We were inundated with mice, rats, the whole lot. He just was quite happy to let me just rot in there. But he was always out, and I couldn't figure out. He was saying, "Oh, I'm just going to be at Blues or whatever." And I found out quite a few years later that he actually was taking my money that I was making and giving it to a girl he'd been in a relationship a long time with that was nothing to do with the life of prostitution. So when we were in the flat and there was all these mice and everything, by this time I was pregnant with my second child, because there's only 11 months between the first 3.
Okay.
So I'm pregnant with my second child, and it just hit a point where I said, I cannot come back here, because I can't let a midwife come and see me living like this in such dirt, because straight away you'd have lost your kids.
Yeah.
So I went to my mum's. By this time there was a lot of violence, because obviously my head's messy. I feel violated. I've got this child. I've not even got any time to bond with my child, because we had a regular babysitter who used to charge us something stupid like £60 a night. But she was a family woman. She had 6 kids of her own, and she was a lovely woman. So I used to pay it, because I knew that my kids were my daughter, as it was safe with her. So just before when I had my son, we were still in the flat. He had dropped me off. He'd bought me a shish kebab, I'll never forget. And I'm sat on the bed, and bearing in mind I come in from the street about 2 o'clock in the morning. He bought me this kebab. I ate the kebab. By the time I got home it was about 4, and my waters just went, but he wasn't there. So I had to go to a phone box to call him, to tell him that my waters had gone. Went into hospital. Prior to this, I'd saved about £200, because when I had my first daughter, I didn't have any money put away. So when I had my son, I'd saved £200, and he when he came to visit me in the hospital, because he wasn't there when I had my son, but he got there very soon after, and I'm like, "Where have you been?" And he's like, "Oh, I had to take another girl over to Bradford last night, and she messed me about, and I've been chasing her around all night in a taxi, and I couldn't find her, and I've got no money." I'm like, "Well, I gave you 2 sanitary towels. I need nappies. I've got nothing of what I need. So what am I going to do?" He said, "Oh, don't worry, I've bought you some clothes." So I'm like, this was at 8:30 in the morning. I'd given birth at 4 o'clock in the morning. So he gave me this bag of clothes. He said, "Anna, there's no choice. You've got nothing. We need things at home. We've got to get some electric or whatever for the son." He said, "You've got no choice." So I literally borrowed 1 sanitary towel from the hospital. I was too embarrassed to go and get a nappy. Plus, if they saw me getting a nappy, they would have known that I'm up to something. Because he was like, "Oh, go in, where they store them, just go get some nappies." I'm like, "No, I can't do that, because by this time I'm dressed if they see me." So we ended up sneaking out of the hospital with my son, and he dropped me from the hospital onto a street corner. And again, that was another pivotal moment where everything just went downhill while I was working. And it is quite crude, because I was bleeding down my legs, because obviously the pad wasn't very good. You've just given birth. He was in a flat across looking out, and I knew that my son was just laid on somebody's bed on a towel, because there was no nappy. So this punter picked me up, and I just burst out crying. It was just like, when you just hit that point of too much. And I remember he gave me £500. He said, "Look, just get yourself off and go look after your child." But still, he took that money, went to the bookies, and that was it. Again, I was working the next day. I managed to get the couple of little bits I got. But to him, it's like, "Oh, Anna's out of hospital now. Everything's back to normal. I don't have to save anything." So even from having my son, I didn't get any time at home to do that kind of parenting thing. Then with the 3rd pregnancy, again, I was working up until the night that I had her. I had her I worked the night before. I had her at 4 in the afternoon. I came out of hospital because it's your 3rd, and we lived really close. I was home after 3 hours. Next day, back working again for the same reasons. When she was 2 weeks old, I got a really dodgy punter that left me for dead at the back of a health centre. I can't remember what happened, but I blame myself, because by this time, I don't want to be nice and just have sex with you. I'm going to try and rob you. I'm going to tell you that if you don't give me your money, you're going to get robbed. Anything to get money without having to be physically touched. So I worked through all 3 of them, but it was a very weird. Everybody at the nursery that knew me loved and respected me. They knew what I was doing, but I wasn't a bad parent as such, because my kids were always kind of fed, well behaved. There was no kind of untoward behaviour. But looking back now, that that 3 years of having kids and then being forced in a way to detach from them kids has done a lot of damage. This is one of the long-term sort of effects. So I think I stayed with him for another 3.5 years, but by this time violence was pretty bad. You know, you say anything or speak up, then it was abuse. I wasn't even drinking. I used to smoke a lot of weed to kind of blank things out. If there was no money, he'd get angry. If he would see me on a street corner and I was talking instead of working, he'd get angry. And he started to follow. You'd have your really bad pimps that were very controlling. Then you'd have some what they call pimps who are just new pimps who just they're very soft, and they would mock them for being soft with their women. So he was getting. So I didn't realise there was pressure for guys to put on that whole kind of front.
So it escalated his control.
Yeah, but also at the same time, I think I was more numb. So it became a very normal way of life for me. It was just what it was, how it was. Every day was a set routine. I mean, a typical day at this stage would be, I'd get up at, I don't know whether to start it from the morning. So I'd get up in the morning. They let my kids go to nursery from a very young age because obviously they know that I need that space, that time. So the nursery helped me a hell of a lot. They offered me a lot of support, but it'd be a case of I'd have, remember, a double pram and a baby sling. So by now I've got like a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old and a newborn. So I'd have the double pram and the sling. I didn't have a washing machine in our little house despite how much money I'd made.
Wow.
My kids were more or less living in disposable clothes. I'd go buy some to hold back some money, run to town next morning, get them some clothes, and then because I didn't have a washer, I just used to throw it all out. You know, we were walking over mountains of sicky clothes, shitty clothes because the kids are young. So I'd go to nursery at 8, I'd have a bag full of washing, the kids, and then I'd stop there, do my washing, come back about 10:30 once the washing was wet, carry the wet washing back up the road to dry at home. Then I'd get a bath, wash away the kids and the mum's side away, get dressed to go and do like Friday afternoon or afternoons because there was a strip club on Spencer Place, the Gatey at the bottom. So we always used to, around about lunchtime, there was always money to make at lunch. So have a bath, wash the kids away, put on the work clothes, go out, do the lunchtime, move before all the other kids came out from school, go home, have a bath, wash the work away, get back into mum's clothes, pick up the kids from nursery, go up to Quick Save with some money I'd made in the afternoon. We lived daily. There was no weekly shopping, so buy the stuff they needed, bring them home, feed them, bath them, put them in their pyjamas, then take them back to the babysitter, and then work from like 8 till 4 in the morning. Come back, at which time he would just disappear again. Oh, he's in blues with his friends, but he wasn't. He was with that other woman. So the whole circle was like prostitution twice in the day, parenting twice in the day, but very, very like numb.
Yeah.
So that was that. Then we had a massive argument. I can't remember what it was. Oh, I can remember what it was over. I'd been out, and a guy locked me and this other girl in his place. We were being a bit cheeky with him. We tried to take advantage of him, and it backfired. So he locked us in his premises, and he called somebody else, and we were locked there for about 12 hours. He didn't take any of our money or anything. We already had money from the night before, but obviously my partner's now stressed because he can't find me. He's had to go pick up the kids. You know, everyone's worried, where am I? And then when I came in, the first thing he says to me is like, where the fuck have you been? I said, don't ask me that. Threw the money. I said, that's all you really care about. And that got me a serious beating, probably one of the worst beatings I've ever kind of had from him. And my eldest child she was only, I think she was about 2.5 at this point. So she seen this incident. He actually beat me across the back with a dog chain. We used to have it was actually a snow chain that used to put on like car tyres, but he had a big Rottweiler, so he beat me across the back. Somehow I never knew a beating across the back could make you like go out cold, but when I woke up, my face was in like a rubbish bag in the corner. So I woke up in this bag of rubbish. But my little one was in the kitchen, and to this day, she's troubled from kind of the things that struggling quite a lot through some of the stuff that she's sort of seen. So we did have, it was hard. There was a lot of crap. It was very dysfunctional. You know, it was all about money. It wasn't about thinking long term about the effects or building a family. But after the time he beat me, he also chopped me in the shoulder with an axe, and that was the first time that I had to call my mum and say to my mum, look, because they lived in Northampton, and I said no. I was really scared of the way it got so far. My face was a mess. I've got a scar here where he actually hit me in my nose, and my nose just split open. My jaw was fractured in 3 places, and they even said, you know, I've never seen a fracture like that, even from a boxer. So I had to have it all my mouth wired, and then this big chop on my shoulder.
Wow, he could have killed you.
You don't think about it at the time, but I went to my mum's, and my mum was like, right, you're not going back. I still didn't tell her what I was involved in. I never ever told her until it was over. So she got me into a hostel, and the day I was due to move in the hostel, he was already calling me back. Oh, I really love you, should never have done it. Come back, I've got us a new house, we'll get married, blah, blah, blah. And I fell for it, you know, like. And I remember my mum crying on the doorstep saying to me, look, I don't want you to go, but if you go, no, you can always come back. She went, I'm not going to say to you, if you go with him, don't come back. She went, no matter how many times, she went, you can always come back. And my dad threatened him. I saw my dad actually threaten him. When we drove off, him and the friend that came to pick me up were just laughing at my parents in the car. So at that point I already thought, what are you doing? You know, what are you going back to? And then just lived that cycle again for maybe another 7-8 years.
What was the connection between the strip club and
myself?
Yeah.
Well, where Gatey was, there was a strip club which was completely separate to what we did, but it used to bring all the businessmen in of a lunchtime to Chapeltown. You know, they all slag Chapeltown off, but they know exactly what to go there and find. So the club was really busy during the afternoon, so our purpose of being there was when they come out of the pub, obviously they're feeling that way out, so they can just drive up the corner and pick somebody up. So there was a lot of money to be made straight after the strip club.
So there were girls working on the streets on the corner just round from the strip club. So there's definitely like a connection there between
I suppose you can't really get
and
the sex in the club, but you know, it's like them girls turn them on and then they come to us and relieve themselves before going back to work or wherever the hell they slide back to.
Because some people make the argument that strip clubs have nothing to do with
whatever.
with selling.
That's not true.
Yeah.
And if they're really honest, there's a lot of the selling that goes on within that environment. You don't even have to come outside of the environment to get that. Nowadays, you can get that.
How did you eventually get away from him?
I did it was quite weird because there was a curb crawlers initiative that Julie Bindle tried to start. She did start it, and it was basically a scheme.
When was this?
This would have been in 1999, I think. And the idea was that instead of sending men to court, you'd give them an opportunity to either go to court or go on this, like they called it the John School, more or less. So you can come to this building, you can listen to ex-prostituted women tell their stories. It's supposed to make you feel really, really rubbish about what you're hearing, and that's it. You don't go back out there. And then they asked me if I would be a part of the John School. And I was one of the few people that said, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right, because in my point of view, if you have 2 kinds of punters, you have just a lonely man who's got no bad intention, he just can't get sex from his wife or whatever rubbish excuse they use, but they'll come and it's very above board. But then you get your abusive kind of punters, and as far as I'm concerned, if you're running that kind of initiative, then a normal softish guy hearing that is not going to come anywhere near. They're going to have the impact. It's going to have the impact on them that you want it to have. But an abusive man that gets off on abuse is going to think that's great. You know, he's going to come there, get really high off what these girls are crying and spilling out their feelings and stuff. And then they're going to go away, and they're the only ones that are going to be back on the street. So I said I didn't really want to be a part of it. I'm not taking anything away from anybody who thought it would be a good idea, but my perception of it was completely different. And during this time we went to go meet another woman called Irene Iverson. She's dead now, God bless her, but she had a daughter called Fiona she kept trying to tell social services, my daughter's going down the wrong path, I need your help. they didn't help her, and she got groomed into prostitution and murdered 2 days before Christmas in, I think it was Doncaster. So I'd met her mum, and hearing her mum talk just totally kind of finished me, you know, hearing it from a mum's point of view about how she would stand on the street corners and beg people to stop, you know, not pay for her daughter. So that's how I got out of it. I then went on to do support work with women that were still in it, you know, started a drop-in where they could come in and get like food, wash their clothes, have a shower. It was very hard to
You started that?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was really hard to get a premises for them to do it. I started it through another organisation. They just said, look, Anna, what can we do to help? So I says, well, you need to offer them something. And women, like in my position, are not going to come in if you're not going to get anything from it, whether it be a free condom, a chance to wash her clothes, a bit of support for court. But nobody in the area would give them a place to kind of use. So I was quite a good middle ground, because I'm not saying I was liked like I'm anything popular, but because I'm so real, and I think people just, like, you all know each other. So I managed to get this place called Archway to agree to let the women use, but it was on certain really strict rules, like they weren't allowed around the kitchen area to use any of the utensils. We had to kind of find a way to stop them doing that. That was easy, you know, you guys sit down, let us make you something. Right, and I would be responsible for bleaching out the cups, because obviously there is risks from diseases. Yeah. And they'd let them use the washing machine, but I had to make sure that I was bleaching out the washing machine, and things like that made me feel rubbish. You know, you really do think that we're dirty, but then you have to put it in perspective. By this time, a lot of the girls were injecting, they were using, they've got thromboses. A lot of them would come in and I'd sit there and treat and change their dressings, which was an awful job. And then that was running in 2003, and by that time there was 3 of us working, and I started then to put together a prevention program around grooming. So I did this thing where we like put this exercise thing, and we got to do it in 2 schools, and it'd be things like we'd draw like an outline, almost like a gingerbread outline, and give them 2 and just say, right, draw one as a prostitute and draw one as a teenager, so put on whatever clothes or whatever. So a lot of the young people were putting like fishnet tights, short skirt, beads, injection holes, you know, all heavy makeup, big lipstick, and they were calling that the prostitute. But on the teenager it'd be like tracksuit and trainers, and I had to break it down to them that is the TV version of a prostitute and how it used to be. But this, in reality, this teenage girl is more like what's out there now, because that's how it was. We did a brainstorm where I made them kind of put prostitute in the middle, and what slang words do you know? So it'd be usual slag, whore, slut, you know, all the things that they came out with. And then we had cards, and we said, right, where do you think you're most likely to get groomed, you know, in society? And there was things like library, nightclub. So obviously they were going for the nightclub and the more out places, whereas the truth of the matter is anywhere, you know, any place that's here, there's a chance that you could get groomed. Then at the end of the talk, I kind of was speaking to them. I said, you know that whore, that slag, that bitch, that prostitute. I said, that used to be me. And their reactions are just like, wow, because you've come across them so normal, and yet they realise, and the amount of kids that were like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to call you that. I said, no, it's fine. But at the same time, there was maybe 2 out of each group that would come forward and express concerns for somebody that was in their circle. Wow. So we did that, and then running the drop-in, and that was kind of the end of it for me, because when I was at the drop-in, there's a girl I've known all my life through the prostitution. I called her the godmother to my eldest child, but it was just nothing official because we didn't do christenings or anything. And I'd moved into a big house that was on Spencer Place, because I'd split up with my partner, so it was just me and the kids in this house. He had the old house that I loved, but he wouldn't move. But I remember saying my mum got cancer, and it was terminal, and there wasn't a long time from when we found out till when she kind of died. So I remember saying I need to go over to be with my mum for a couple of weeks, but I'm a bit scared about leaving my house because the back door's dodgy and I can't lock the back door. The girl who was my good friend, she was a very bad on crack, and coke and heroin. So she heard this, and when I'm away, she broke into my place, used it to take her punters and to take her coke and to have her little crack house. She left the door open, so all the kids locally robbed anything that was worth any money. I didn't have a clue. She was upstairs. My mum died on the 26th of July at 1:25 in the morning. She always said to me, Anna, when I go, I'll get straight back to the kids, please, get straight back to the kids, because by now she knew what my life was and she didn't want me leaving the kids too long. So I made that promise. So she died at 1:25. I left at 9:25 to get a coach back, no train. As I'm on my train, like 5 minutes outside of Leeds, I got a phone call saying, Anna, where are you? Your house is on fire.
Oh my God.
So when I'd gone back up to the street, this girl had been doing in the attic room, she had been taking heroin, chased the dragon, but left the candle on like a buffet thing in my daughter's room when she had gouged, so she had fell asleep. So I literally lost all of my house, and my mum and my house within 24 hours. Then I lost my job because she was obviously using the drop-in. I was a worker at the drop-in, and obviously I'm pissed off. So they were too scared to let me go back into that drop-in in case I did something to her. And I just thought, wow, you know, I'm an ex-prostitute myself. I still need support myself. So I lost my mum, my job, and my house. It was just like, well, where'd you go from there? It was a tough time. I think it's the only time out of everything that I really fell on my knees and thought, what the hell, you know, no matter what I'd gone through before, to lose everything in that kind of, that spare time was pretty hard.
Wow. You've been through a lot.
Yeah, that's just what I went through. It's just like, from there.
Do you know about the stories of the other girls you know, that when you first started getting into prostitution, the girls that were with the same pimps, like, what happened to them?
I know a few. There's a few that have just gone missing and nobody seems to know where they are. What tended to happen with a lot of the girls and the men, coke came in. And coke was a rich man's drug right then. Before all the drugs, it used to be about, you could tell who was the rich
just to
kid.
clarify, like, how long ago was this that we're talking about? What time period is it? What year?
When it started to turn all towards coke.
Well,
about
no, just
19.
when you started.
I started in 1989, did it for about 10 years, but
Right.
just before I left, it was quite easy in a way to leave because you weren't making money. If you didn't have a drug addiction and you weren't willing to just take £5, £10, you weren't. If I'm working and I've not got an addiction and you're working next to me and you have, and a punter pulls up and I want a normal £15, if you've got £20 in your pocket and your fix is 25, you're going to offer yourself for that £5. So it became really pointless.
Yeah.
The girls weren't looking out for each other. Only if somebody got coke and could we go and share it. There was a lot of internal politics. Pimping then was no longer a trend. There was no money in pimping. There was more money in being a crack dealer. Because if I'm a pimp and I've got a girl working and he sells coke, the girl that I've got working is going to go to him to buy coke rather than bring money home to me. So from a pimp's point of view, that's when they would start being dealers. So they would give you it, let you trust it, let you owe them for it, and they'd have a load of girls that owed them money for it. They stopped looking out for each other, you know, they were all, well, not dog eat dog is probably not the right expression, but they were all just on their own agenda, often poorly, drinking a lot to bear the pain.
But you didn't get into drugs?
No, heavy weed smoker. I mean, I still smoke weed to this day, but I was a heavy weed smoker. Not heavy, but always had it. You know,
Yeah.
I'd always afford it, but never anything stronger than that, because I could see what it was doing, and
Yeah.
I've got kids, so I couldn't even take that kind of risk.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only reason I'm still alive and as strong as I am today, because I didn't go down that route. I mean, I've lost so many friends to the streets, whether it be murder, whether it be a drug overdose or something like that. So I think it all came to a bit of a natural kind of end, but that's only the end of a lifestyle. It's not the end of, it's only then the start of the damage that you realise it's kind of done, because while you're in it, I think you feel very in control. There's just something about it where you always tell yourself, I know what I'm doing, I've got this, you know. When people say, oh, Anna, how do you do it? I just do it, it's fine. You know, it's like you're in denial.
Do you think there's a sort of a bravado almost amongst women that sell sex. It's kind of almost macho in a way. The kind of bravery of it.
Yeah.
You're like a soldier on the front line.
You do feel like you're in control.
Yeah.
Like, you're hard, you're invincible.
Hard.
Nobody can, other girls would be scared of it. I'd go out to work and girls are like, oh, Anna, I'll get off your corner. It's like, no, it's not my corner, like, oh, Anna's coming. You felt like, nah, just because I've had a fight with someone doesn't mean that I'm that. They used to call it the queen bee. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm really not that girl kind of thing. But it does make you quite hard as well. I think you take that many beatings that you just think, oh, not another one. So you do tend to lash out. I was probably fighting with punters more than anything else, I'd go out of my way to give them a hard time. And that's why when I got left for dead, I just said to myself, you did something, Anna. I'd rather tell myself that you did something to get it than believe that somebody could just do that to you for nothing. It's like you take the blame, you blame yourself for everything that's sort of gone on. So,
and what were the punters like? Generally, like what kinds of men are we talking about here? What was your sort of typical client on Spencer Place?
They kind of come in 3 categories. You've got your businessman who should be at work in his suit that pops in, or maybe between sort of like midday and 6, pure businessmen. When it gets dark, between 6 and 10, more kind of Asian man, local Asian men. From 10 onwards, totally different class. Lads out in groups from clubs. Oh, let's go down Spencer Place. So you'd get ridiculed a lot. You'd get wee thrown at you. You'd get snowballs thrown at you, just for the fun of it, because they think it's funny to come out and do that. And then you've got really seedy, twisted ones that just want to abuse, or they want to be abused, So, but I'd say 60% of the punters, white businessmen, middle class kind of men. 20% Asian men that live local, and then whatever's left, just weird people. It kind of takes all sorts, but most of the time, pretty normal.
And what about when the punter left you for dead? Did that not make you feel like you weren't in control anymore? Or
it did, but what was really, again, when I just think about it now, when the partner that I was with picked me up, he slapped me across my face to bring me back around. There was an old black lady that saw me. She must have said to some of the girls, oh, one of your kind needs some help round there. I'll never forget that. So they came round, they called him. He came, he slapped me in the face to wake me up, to bring me back around. And he could hear the sirens coming. So he didn't want me to have to get picked up by an ambulance to go to the hospital, because then he wouldn't be able to come to the hospital because it's obvious that I'm a prostitute. So there would be police involved. So he picked me up, put me in his car. So he kindly took me home. I had a young babysitter at the time. She was 19. And when he took me in and put me on the sofa and she saw the state of me, she beat him. She attacked him because she thought he had done this to me. I don't remember much more, because he said I slept then for 24 hours. After being delirious, I just slept. I woke up the next day. He had ran me a bath. I had ripped. I used to always wear like a swimming costume, because I figured if I'm going to get raped, it's a lot easier than just pulling anything up. So I generally wore trousers, and I'd always have this like full-in-one swimming costume. So I'd always just pull it to the side. If you're in a car, I've got every excuse, but I felt that kind of kept me safe. So I remember all these rips. Again, I had a damaged jaw. I got toxemia. The man burnt me with some cigarettes, but prior to the toxemia, because that takes a few days to come out, he'd run me a bath. He said, you know what it is, babes? He said, you need to go straight back out. He said, do not let one man put you off everything that you can earn. He said, that's only one bad man out of so many years. I think it'd been about 5 years. So he convinced me to give me that, that strength. Yeah, I'm not letting one man put me off, blah, blah, blah. So I went straight back out.
Wow.
When I did come round, had the bath, got changed, still got bruises on me. And I've gone back out. The guy did it to somebody else as well. It wasn't just me, so I don't think I did provoke him. All I could remember was aftershave. And not long ago, I sat next to someone on the tube, and I just smelt, and when you get a bit of it's like my mind was trying to, because I don't have no memory. They said like sometimes in a shock and a trauma, your mind can just completely switch off and count it out. But I felt that this man's smell was trying to bring something back to me. So again, that's another one of them kind of triggers. Then 3 days later, the guy had burnt me with something, and I got toxemia. And I didn't know it until I pushed in my legs, and my legs were just staying in. They were really swollen and they were yellow. So they took me into hospital, gave me intravenous drips, you know, the whole lot. And again, he came because he couldn't cope with the kids after 2 days. Oh, your swelling's gone down now, there's clothes, we need to go back out. So I never had time to be a mum, never had time to be ill, you know, it was all that constant. But you think you're a warrior, you know, because I've done it, I've got over it and all the rest of it. But
and there was hardly any time to think or reflect before you're back out doing it again.
Yeah, and I think that's where the damage is these days, because you do have these little things, you just quickly put it to the back of your mind kind of thing.
And what do you think about the term sex work? I've noticed you've been using the term prostitution to describe what you do. Some people call it sex work nowadays.
Sex work just sounds like shop work, or it sounds like taxi work or bar work. It's work.
What do you think about the argument that it's that it's just a job like any other?
No. I don't agree with that. A job just like any other is not supposed to psychologically scar you or damage you in any kind of way. And if you were working a job like any other that was doing you damage, you'd leave it. So I think it's just very much it becomes a way of life, and although you know what damage you're doing to yourself, it just becomes your way of life. So it's kind of hard. But I think denial is what gets a lot of us through it. Then you hear that women that work as escorts in clubs think that they're doing something different to what you're doing out on the street, and at the end of the day we've all got that one thing in common, we're all selling our bodies. And what I didn't realise when I was doing it, that not only am I selling my body, but I think now looking back, I sold a piece of my soul every time I lay down with someone I didn't know. And it's only like the later on in life you get that you realise you're quite empty. You know, I could never fit into a normal relationship, way of life, parenthood. You know, my relationship with my children can't just suddenly fix, you know, everything can't just be. It's a long form of damage, and you don't realise what damage you're doing yourself often until it's too late. But there's no support either to help women who have come through that. Or not just women, I say women, we end up being women, but when you're doing it from the age of 16, 17, 18, you're actually children that are growing up in that lifestyle. So you're damaging yourself as a child, and then it's very, very difficult to find a place where you can flip that back around and undo what's been done. It's very scarring. No matter what they say, you know, you might think you're in control because you run an escort company or whatever, but you are selling a piece of yourself. It's not just a vagina, it's a piece of your heart and a piece of your soul that is going every time you get paid for something. So was it worth it? Nah. I did part of this counselling thing. This woman said to me, oh, just try and work out, Anna, how much money do you think you gave away over that period of time? I said, oh, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 8,000. She went, no, let's work it out. So she went like, right, you've worked 10 years. You worked I'd work Christmas Day. I worked every single day for 10 years, apart from if I was giving birth. And the least I would make, I think, would be about 120, 130, because we had to have a set amount before you could go in. Anything over that was a bonus. And then when she worked it out, I think the figure was something like 750 odd thousand pounds. I just thought, my God, that's like £750,000 over 10 years that I've paid somebody, and all he used to do was put it in the bookies. It was like, oh, if I wasn't taking for the food or whatever, anything that was left over was going to William Hill. You just think, wow, £750,000 just gone in harming yourself. You know, what have you got to show for it? Nothing. But internal, external, physical, mental damage, is it ever worth it? So I think it's on the long-term damage. There was an incident not long ago where I had been called in for a meeting at work, and it was by somebody in work that I knew I just wasn't getting on with. So they just said to me, oh, you know, I need to meet with you tomorrow at 2. So I've asked, can I ask what it's about? And they're like, no, I can't tell you until I see you tomorrow. And that was from like 4 in the afternoon, so I had to wait just under 24 hours. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I felt like I was waiting to get beat or I felt like I was in a situation where something really, really bad was going to happen to me. And I just thought, wow, you know, that's part of the long-term damage, not, you know, that fear of waiting for, I don't know whether it's being like locked in a room waiting for someone to come back, or going back to your pimp and telling you you've got no money. You know, it felt like a really horrible kind of
dread.
Yeah. And rejection is a thing that I feel dirty. I'm always going to feel dirty. I've got some serious body loathing. I don't allow myself to be where I know I could be in life. You know, I always hold myself back. When I did start to progress in the community, people would be like, who does she think she is? She was just a street girl. And I just think, wow. And instead of looking at it as if, oh, they're really trying to hold you down because you're doing well, I just used to think, oh yeah, you know, I better know my place. So now I spend my time cleaning. You know, cleaning up behind it. I work in a hotel, making turn-down beds for people that are in the hotel. And when I was doing it the other day, I thought, I've had business in so many hotel rooms, and here I am now turning down the beds. And I saw a girl come out of a room with a guy, and straight away I just went, poof. I knew straight away what this girl had been at the hotel with. So there's always a little trigger somewhere.
Yeah.
But also the three eldest that grew up in that, their lives are really, really shit. And obviously I'm a big part to blame for that. Their dad is actually the pimp, is now a learning mentor in a school doing really, really well, and he works in a bookies. He's got 2 jobs, new relationship, still got our old house. And I've had to constantly move because of the trouble, you know, that my kids are getting into. Because also in a community, if there's an argument, oh, your mum this, your mum that, your mum this, and my son really, really struggled. He told me one time when Grand Theft Auto first came out, that he was sat in a room playing it with a load of lads, and they were deliberately making him go to find the prostitute in the game and beat up the prostitute. And he didn't tell me till he was about 19. He said, Mum, it really hurt me. He said, but I had to do it, because if I didn't do it, you know, I'm going to look like I'm some kind of idiot. He said, but it really hurt me to have to do it. He said, and what hurt me more is they made me do it because they knew what you used to do. So he's grown up with that kind of thing. My daughters have grown up with the same kind of thing. You know, so these long term, my family is so fractured.
So even though you stopped, you got out the game 20 years ago, it's still something.
The damage is done, you know, it's irreversible. It's very, very fractured, and I don't think our family will ever get back where it should be. I've got 6 grandkids, you know, and it's all totally divided. But their dad doesn't get any noise. You know, when they're mad, when they're upset, it comes to me. And people say, oh, you know, it's because they're closest to you. Well, great, you know, but him, why don't you give him some of the noise or whatever? And he just says to them when they come, oh, shut up, I'm not interested, that was then, this is now. Whereas with me, I can't just shut them off like that, you know, I have to take the abuse, I have to let them vent back at me. But I've hit a point now where I just think, I can't take any more. Because for 15 years now, no, is it 15 years, 21 years, 19 years, I've been out of it. So don't keep punishing me for something that I did 19 years ago, whereas for 19 years I've been trying to be like the best I can.
Yeah.
So long-term effects, truth of the matter is, it's something I'm never going to forget, and something that's I'm not going to be able to just suddenly think, oh yeah, I'm great, I really like the skin I'm in, I really like the lifestyle I'm at. I'm very lonely, I'm quite isolated, couldn't get into a relationship. I find it so hard to get into a relationship, and if I do, I'm going to have to explain this or that.
Do you think it's changed your attitude towards men in general?
Yeah. Because after their dad, I was single for a long time. Then I started to see this guy, and I only saw him twice a week. And then he was saying, no, he didn't want a relationship, blah, 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 so I got it. And then he ended up being in a relationship and getting engaged to someone else. Well, I still thought I had a relationship with him. And when I questioned it, he said, yeah, but Anna, how am I supposed to have a relationship with you? He said, everybody knows what you did. And I thought, wow, so you don't mind sleeping with me, but to let people know that you're with me because of my past, you can't have that in your life. And that did probably as much damage as the whole years from before. So from there, that was 5 years ago, I've never entertained from there. I'm just not. I think I need to probably learn to love me or like me before I can even think about it.
Yeah.
But I think I'd be quite happy to just be on my own. You do crave that having somebody because she's due to leave home, but I just think, nah, there's less headache, you know.
Yeah.
The thought of having sex, I've not had sex in so long, and people are like, don't it bother you? It's like, no, not at all. It's nice. You know, like, wow, I couldn't imagine sharing remote and toilet seat and all that again. Too stuck in my ways.
Could you talk a bit more about grooming, and what it is, and like how you define it?
Grooming, there's various ways of it. Like, it still goes on now, obviously, but it's about, there was ways that grooming would happen. Like I said, I was just put in the right social circle, but then there'd be other situations, and some of the worst groomers back then, believe it or not, were women. You'd have a woman who's maybe a bit older than us that's done that kind of lifestyle, and they would see a girl that's run away from a home or something. She would take them in, offer them a sofa to sleep on, give them some food, and then before you know it, they're telling that girl, oh, you owe me money for electric, or you owe me money for such and such. And we were like, what? How do I get money? I haven't got any money to give you. Oh, well, I know what you can do. So there's very clear kind of giving stuff for grooming, a bit like they do now in the chicken shops with the young lads for like money. Like, so the minute you put 50 quid in a young boy's hand, that's another way of grooming. What bothers me the most this day and age is even my youngest, there's grooming going on the Instagram, on the Snapchat, and it's not people are targeting her, it's that them needing to be liked, needing to be popular, needing to be out there and accepted. So I think grooming comes in so many different ways, shapes or forms, and it's not just about the prostitution, you know. I think a lot of it is mental. You pick on somebody who, or you set your sights on somebody who's quite weak, quite needy, has no confidence.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerable, homeless, you know, you become their best friend, they become reliant on you. You can either get them to do it through love, or you can shower them with this, that and the other, then they owe you, you know. It takes many forms.
Because something you said earlier that I thought was interesting was that a part of grooming is that the person that's being groomed doesn't see it like that and feels like they're making a conscious choice out of their own free will.
And I think that goes on a lot as well, because when you used to speak to any of us out there, we wouldn't tell you for 1 minute, oh, we've been battered into this, or we've been pushed into it, or anything like that. They make the whole thing somehow look attractive or beneficial, so you just think, oh yeah, I always thought I was in control, always, until the first time that I got left by that guy. I always thought, oh, I'm fully in control of this. So yeah, I think they just give you the tools, or give you quick to give you a condom, quick to give you a place to go and take your punters. I remember being brought up to London once, because, oh, you know, you can make so much more money in London, look at you, you're stunning. There was a lot of, you're stunning, you know, people will pay loads for you, so they kind of boost your confidence, and they're like, here, it's like winding you up and watch you go kind of thing. So yeah, I'd definitely say grooming takes many, many forms. I don't even know how I feel about him now, to be honest. I mean, I'm envious that he's doing so well, but his body language and everything, whenever he's around me, he's very sheepish. But I can't, you know, when I'm near him, I just get this real, like, oh, it's horrible, really.
You've been listening to the Nordic Model Now podcast. Nordic Model Now is a UK grassroots women's group campaigning for the abolition of prostitution and related practices, such as lap dancing, pornography and surrogacy. Find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at Nordic Model Now, or visit our website at nordicmodelnow.org. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.